All right, we are live. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of I Believe Now What, where we talk about that now what that comes after we believe. And today, one of those things is going to be talking a little bit about denominations, specifically talking about the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, if this is your first time here, that's exactly what we're all about, talking about that now what that comes after we believe, just like it says in the name. If this is not your first time here, do highly encourage you to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help out in pushing this message forward. With that being said, so a couple probably days ago, really more like a week ago, we did a couple videos regarding David Platt and things that were going on over at McLean Bible Church, specifically talking about a documentary that was done. And one of the overarching themes in there was how it seemed as if David Platt was violating the church's constitution. The elders of that church, not just David, but the elders as well, were violating their church constitution, which said that their church would not be a part of a Christian denomination. When in fact, the McLean Bible Church was in full cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention. And this kind of drew a debate. And I saw it going amongst the comments. Is the Southern Baptist Convention a denomination? So we're going to go ahead and get into that. We're going to kind of jump into it. Now, I will say straight up, the Southern Baptist Convention itself does not consider itself to be a denomination. But at the same time, just because you believe you're not something, does that actually make it so? Or is the Southern Baptist Convention basically a denier, believing they are not a denomination when in reality they are? All right, let's kind of go ahead and jump into it. And I do have some notes prepared because I don't want to get super off topic. As always, if you are participating in the live stream, highly encourage you to drop your comments over there. I already see we got a number of them rolling in, and we will go through it as we break up, the various sections, and at the end, hopefully have a nice, good, edifying conversation. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So what is a denomination, first off? And I already see y'all commented on there. Susie Q is all over it. So a denomination is generally defined as a recognized autonomous branch of the Christian church. This is like basic Google definition, because let's be honest here. A denomination is a very subjective term. What do you mean when we're talking about the Christian context of a denomination? It is a very, very subjective term. And there is a dictionary definition to it, but it's such a ambiguous definition that it could really apply to just about anything. So, a recognized autonomous branch of the Christian church, this refers to groups of churches that share a common faith and practice, often characterized by specific beliefs and traditions. This broader definition could apply really to any grouping, not just religious context, indicating a specific name and classification with a larger system. So that's your basic kind of dictionary claim to what a denomination is. Now, let's go ahead and see if y'all had anything else. So Susie Q, once again, putting it up there, recognized autonomous branch of the Christian church. Rita points out, hey, good point. Are they who they say they are, or they say who they aren't? Not to get word salad all thrown up in there. Susie also writes that I was always thought the SBC was the denomination, and the fact that she was raised in the SBC. And just to be 100% transparent, I am a member of an SBC church. I was in my previous church before I moved. The new church that I'm currently at is also within fellowship of the SBC. So, this is kind of I want you to say this is a very non-biased thing, because you're going to be kind of surprised, I guess, probably by what I'd say if you were brand new to this channel and you were just kind of jumping in. So let's kind of head and keep on going with this. So denomination is typically characterized by several key elements. Number one, a shared belief. And yes, I'm reading from a script because I want to make sure I get this right. So shared beliefs. Denominations have a common set of theological beliefs and doctrines. Baptists specifically, obviously believers' baptism being one of those big defining terms in there. There's multiple other things, but you also have their organizational structure, the autonomy and cooperation, because every denomination is a little bit different. So the SBC, let's just say, take a model like the SBC. The SBC allows the churches to basically govern themselves. And I can't even say allow, because they have no control over those churches whatsoever. In the strictest sense of to the letter of the law, the SBC does not control those churches. If a church wants to join the SBC, or actually, as you were If a church wants to leave the SBC that was once a part of it, the SBC has no bearing or ability to really say no, or no, you can't do that, or seize their property, or things of that nature. Now, if you take another denomination, such as we just saw this unraveling with the UMC, United Methodist Church, denomination that once, was pretty much on the more solid side of Christianity, and now has just completely gone the way where you shouldn't even acknowledge the UMC whatsoever. They're so far gone from anything Christian. I mean, the Wesley brothers, if they cared what was going on right now, I can't imagine that they would be too happy. But the UMC, long story short, as basically when churches leave the UMC, now they have a little provisional period there because they were changing the rules a lot and they wanted to get rid of all the conservative churches. But let's just say right now, if you wanted to leave the UMC basically can say, well, we own your church, we own that property, we're taking that back. You see PCA do this as well, and PCUSA. They basically own those churches, own that property. The SBC doesn't work like that. They're autonomous churches, meaning the churches govern themselves. But basically, the SBC, and we're going to get into their actual definition, go to their website and stuff. But basically, they like to believe that it's just a fellowship of churches coming together with shared beliefs. So, got a couple questions over here, or actually more so comments. So Faith and Photos put early church in the SBC is autonomous as well. Also notes that they graduated from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Sorry, that's a word full. SWBTS. That's what that stands for, in Fort Worth. It's not too far away from where I'm at right now. Susie Q writes in, they are in quote friendly cooperation, but the SBC can stop cooperating with that church. And Susie Q, you do bring up a really good point that we were going to hit up a little bit later, but I'll go ahead and bring it up now since you are talking about this. So the SBC basically has some governing rules. You can look at their Southern Baptist Faith and Message. The Southern Baptist Convention, by the way, they will straight up say, we don't hold any creeds or anything like that, but they do have what is known as the Southern Baptist Faith and Message. And if you go to any SBC church, majority of those churches on their website, they'll have their About Us section. They'll write a little bit about ourselves, and then they'll say, for everything else, go ahead and see the Southern Baptist Faith and Message 2000, which is the most updated one, and they'll go through and go over that. 2000, or is it 20? I could be losing my mind here. Sorry, it's been a long day, working full-time job, all that stuff. Anyways, they have their faith and message. That's kind of what they go off of. Now, if there is a church that seems to have violated their collective agreement, their collective fellowship. A good example that we've seen a lot happening in recent past is maybe a church would ordain a female lead pastor or senior pastor, teaching pastor, things of that nature. The SBC, when they gather together for their convention, which really happens 2-3 days out of the year, they will vote to either keep or dismiss that church from the Southern Baptist Convention. We saw this happen very famously with Rick Warren's former church, now pastored by Andy Wood. I'm trying to remember, Saddleback Church over in California, one of the largest churches in the United States. They were actually disfellowshipped, basically kicked out of the SBC. So that's just kind of shows you a little bit. So while the SBC does not govern the churches and does not control the churches, they do have the ability to basically remove somebody that they don't believe is in good fellowship or cooperation with the convention. And hopefully I'm trying to be as neutral here as throughout. Once again, just to let you know, if you think I'm beating up on the SBC, I am part of an SBC church. So I don't want anybody to think about that I'm doing it that way. Moving on to a couple questions. Shelly writes in, she said, didn't Rick Warren split off from the SBC because of his egalitarian views? Yes, exactly. Egalitarian, if you did not know, that basically means that you believe that men and women have equal roles within, I'm talking specifically in Christianity here, have equal roles in the church. So everything a man can do, a woman can do. Me personally, and what the Southern Baptist Convention believes, something known as complementarianism, where we believe that men and women were made to complement each other. We have different roles, We're both equal in the eyes of God. No one's better than anybody else, but we, by God, have been given different roles. And that, I think the Bible makes that honestly crystal clear. You have to do a lot of biblical gymnastics in order to fight what scripture so clearly says on that. But that was why Rick Warren's church, Saddleback Church, was disfellowshipped. Elaine writes in, did I see Rick Warren ordaining 3 to 4 women pastors? I can't remember if I think he did it as one of the last act, but I know it's just kind of gone even more crazy fold ever since Andy Wood took over. Andy Wood has his own uh, issues if you ever want to start digging it up on him, especially when it comes to making people sign NDAs, the allegation of spiritual abuse and coerciveness and things of that nature. Once again, all alleged things like that, but that's what other people have said. Let's go ahead and get back in on the topic that we are talking about, so that way I don't veer too far off into outer space. So that's a little typically basically what a denomination is. And let's go ahead into some arguments on why the SBC could be considered a denomination, but at the same time may not be considered a denomination. I think it's first and most important that we go to what the SBC says about themselves. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out here. Here we find ourselves on the SBC's website. And if you notice, they are very careful with their words, so it doesn't really talk too much about denomination. But when you actually start kind of digging into the weeds, and here's a voices of the SBC or SBC voices where they do actually address this. And this is what this person says. And I really don't like the way that this is worded, but take it for what it is. So it does say this may come as a shocking statement to some, but technically speaking, the Southern Baptist Convention is not a denomination. Once again, this is their claim. It is a group of gathered churches which exists for 2 days of the year when they convene for business. We use denomination terminology because that is the lingua franca of the world, has adopted to talk about divisions in Christian sects. However, unlike denominational groups, the SBC is not organized in a hierarchical structure. There is no top down authority. We do not have a system whereby local churches take direction from other ecclesiastical bodies, entities, association networks, affinity groups, etc. We have no creed, confessional statement to which we are beholden. Now, once again, that is that person's definition of a denomination. The actual term denomination is much more ambiguous and much more broad. Once again, could this be something of the SBC saying that, hey, we're not a denomination, when in actuality you pretty much are? Now, the reason why I make this argument is because exactly what they say right here. We use denomination terminology, and of course they say because that's just how the rest of the world identifies. And we saw this happen in that David Platt video where one of the elders called up and asked, hey, are we a part of the SBC denomination? One of the representatives of the SBC did say yes, and he used the word denomination, and then he kind of had to double back on his words and say, well, I thought I was talking to a layperson, so I just kind of went and rolled with what they were saying. Now, this is one of those things. If you have to use the terminology of denomination in order to try to define, but still say you're not a part of a denomination, you are not a denomination, it just seems kind of crazy. Because when you scour the SBC's website, it seems like you are really seeing denomination. So find a church. Here's their church finder. More than 50,000 churches and congregations taking in the gospel of Jesus Christ. This is basically where you can find an SBC affiliated church. So they have a directory of churches that you can go ahead and look at. They also have a multitude of seminaries. Like we just had somebody on here where they're a graduate of a Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I mean, you have seminaries, you have a church finder that finds churches that are a part of your uh, fellowship. You sound a lot like a denomination. And hopefully, once again, people don't think I'm beating up on the SBC. This isn't about whether the SBC is good or bad, but rather, are we going to call a spade a spade? Are you actually a denomination? And I feel like, yeah, they are a denomination. Um, Moving on, and it kind of, if you go through their website, here's a little bit, and this is where I was finding most of the information regarding this. You can go to their, if I can bring up this tab here. If you go to, this is their like frequently asked questions area. uh, they use the words, and especially throughout all the legal stuff, I just did a quick word search, and you find the words denomination in here kind of all over the place. Um, Here's their church constitution, and I couldn't remember if we were able to find it or not in this, but let's go ahead. I had to clear out my search. All right, so we see it in here twice, messengers from missionary society churches and other religious bodies of the Baptist denomination. So it's not saying Southern Baptist, and directing energies of the denomination for the propagation of the gospel and adopted rules, fundamentals, it's amended. So, they use once again the terminology like they were saying. And let's go ahead and back over here. This is their kind of like your mission statement, relationships, explaining what it's doing. But let's go ahead and just once again look up the term denomination, and you're going to see denomination is kind of written all over this, especially with the denominational entities, things of that nature. And once again, they did say that they were using the terms denomination, terminology because it's just the way that we talk today. But I mean, when you got to use it so much like that, don't you think you might as well just go ahead and call yourself a denomination? Now, granted, just like we talked about earlier, the SBC, not like your UMC, not like your PCA, where they're going to own your church and basically take your church if you decide to teach differently. No, you can just get up and leave. That church has no bearing whatsoever in having to listen to what the SBC says. They can either be disfellowshipped or they could just leave on their own accord. Surprisingly enough, some people don't know this, but a church that I don't consider to be too well of a church, which was Elevation Church over in North Carolina, pastored by a man named Stephen Furtick, actually used to be a part of the Southern Baptist Convention. And then after Rick Warren basically got disfellowshipped, or his church got disfellowshipped, they went ahead and left as well. So there's a lot of like craziness that goes on in there. And, I don't want to talk bad about anything, but, at the same time, could it be that some churches are in the SBC and the SBC does allow a little bit of leeway when it comes to the fact of, well, money? Because the SBC needs money to run, and they work in good cooperation, and they do a good job of this where they work in good cooperation with other entities such as the International Mission Board or the North American Mission Board, because missions is really one of the biggest reasons why the SBC is around, is missions, missions here in the United States, missions around the world, really around the world. I have friends that are on the International Mission Board. These are all entities that work together with the SBC, and it kind of makes it easy and giving and all sorts of things like that. So I'm going off in the field. Let's go ahead and kind of take it back and go to some comments. So Faith and Photos puts, I agree with Susie Q, semantics when it comes to kind of what the SBC is talking about. Abby writes in, welcome, Abby. Seems like they are trying to cover some basis, semantics once again. And they're bringing up, that's going to be a lot of word right there, semantics. Evidence and reasons. Welcome back to the channel. I'm glad to see you back on, brother. Thank you for this discussion of whether the SBC is a denomination. God bless. And if you can go to Evidence and Reasons channel, you can see that documentary and hear kind of the background stories, as he was featured in that documentary very, very heavily. Faith and Photos puts, the SBC is unique in the way that they operate, but it's a denomination to me. And exactly, Faith and Photos, you hit the nail on the head. It's unique, but to me, they're, as much as they want to say that they're not a denomination, they very much are a denomination. Weird Collar Guy writes in, welcome to the channel, Weird Collar Guy. Yes, by definition, the SBC is a denomination. Rita asked the question, what advantage does the SBC have by calling not themselves as not being a denomination? Well, here's one kind of example, Rita, when it comes to it. And I'm going back to that documentary. There are some large non-denominational churches out there, such as McLean Bible Church is, that have, honestly, a massive membership, which means a massive amount of money, which means a massive amount of money could go towards missions. And I'm not trying to make this sound evil by any means whatsoever, but money's a big factor in it. If you call yourself denomination, many non-denominational churches do have written in their bylaws and their constitution, things of that nature, that they will not ever be a part of a denomination. So if you call yourself a denomination, then basically your non-denominational church now has a denomination, which is a Southern Baptist Convention. church, if that makes any sense. That's one thing. Maybe there's some others that you can kind of point out there from the audience perspective, but that's one of the advantages of saying, hey, we're not a denomination, we are a fellowship of churches. Shelley writes in, I can understand why the congregation felt betrayed. Their church was stolen from them. And that's definitely what it seemed like, according to that documentary. Rita, sorry, I was moved about the house, but it's okay. Hey, no judgment for typos here. I am like the king of typos. I swear they invented autocorrect and spell check and everything for somebody just like me. Otherwise, I'd be all over the place. All right, so let's kind of go into the arguments of why the SBC is the denomination and why not. We kind of already hit some of them up, but I want to kind of put in a little bit more of a defined structure. So, going back to my notes, why is the SBC a denomination? Let's go four first. Number one, organizational structure. The SBC has a defined organizational structure, including a convention, various committees, state and local associations, similar to other recognized denominations. I mean, there you go, right there. Number two, common beliefs. The SBC adheres to a very specific set of theological beliefs outlined in the Baptist Faith and Message, providing a cohesive doctrinal framework that unites its member churches. So going back to that Southern Baptist Faith and Message, like I said, now that is not a binding document in the fact of the SBC can once again take away your church, take away your congregation, things of that nature, but it is grounds for dismissal, as we saw in cases of multiple other churches that decided to go against the Constitution and that Southern Baptist Faith and Message. Next is going to be shared resources. The SBC engages in cooperative efforts such as funding missions, educational institutions, which is we talked about the colleges before, which is a hallmark of denominational identity. I mean, you look at a vast majority of denominations, they will usually have their own higher learning centers in which you can be ordained and things of that nature. So there you go, right there. You got a lot of different Southern Baptist theological seminaries floating around out there. And those are not bad schools, by the way. Trust me, I've looked into them. I think Faith and Photos here put mission support with the SBC is incredible. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That's one of the big reasons why I am a member of the Southern Baptist Convention is because of missions. And I have not seen a denomination, at least in my studies, that is so focused on missions where your money is going to help. Like I said, I have friends that are on the International Mission Board that are supported by them who are in cooperation with the SBC, things of that nature. You got the different various offerings, such as the Lottie Moon Christmas offering, things like that. So many good things come out of it. So I don't want to make it seem like this is a bash session, but once again, I want to call a spade a spade. You could say you're not a denomination all day long, but everything points to you being a denomination, Southern Baptist Convention. Weird Collar Guy writes, if the organization can steeplejack a congregation, it's a denomination. And that's a little bit more of a narrow definition, Weird Collar Guy. So the SBC cannot do that. But once again, going back to that very broad definition of what a denomination is, according to the dictionary, it's basically, and I'm bringing it up here so I don't mess it up, a recognized autonomous branch of the Christian church. This refers to groups of churches that share common faith and practices, often characterized by specific beliefs and traditions. Period. That's it. Very, very, very broad definition. Um, Moving back to the comments. Weird Collar Guy once again writes in, says, my little corner of Christianity, we have people who play with, quote, communion rather than church or denomination. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Stephanie Collins writes in and says, bingo, non-denominational churches can be affiliated and give to the CP. CP. Can you define that for me? I might just be missing it, Stephanie Collins, just to double check. But you're right. Non-denominational churches can be affiliated with the SBC. Still give to them, still give to the co-ops, be in full 100% cooperation in their 3 tiers of cooperation. And they can go ahead and say, hey, we're still non-denominational because we're not a part of a denomination, since the SBC does not consider itself a denomination. Oh, and cooperative program. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Sorry, I brain fart sometimes working the full-time job. So doing this late at night. Evidence and Reasons writes in the judge's ruling in the Will McCraney lawsuit. The judge ruled on the assumption the SBC was a denomination. So that is very, very key as well. It's kind of like, once again, you say you're not this, but everything else is pointing to the contrary. So thanks for bringing that up, Evidence and Reasons. Once again, go check out his channel if you get a chance. If you want to dive more into what was happening when it came with the SBC, McLean Bible Church, things of that nature. Daryl Forston writes in, says, I live in Ohio, AOH. That's where I am originally from. And I go to an ABC church. Back when I lived in Wake Forest, I went to an SBC church. I honestly think that they are the same. ABC church, I'm not familiar with that acronym. If you could define it for me just to make sure. Sorry, I don't have all the acronyms down. I wish I did. But you're basically saying you were a part of a church in a denomination. You went to an SBC church and you saw really almost no difference there. Thanks for sharing that, Daryl. Appreciate that. So let's go ahead and move back to kind of more of our comments because we got stuck on there. So number 4, distinct identity. Once again, these are reasons why I believe the SBC is the denomination, or arguments you could make for it. The SBC has a distinct identity and a history within the broader Christian community, often distinguishing itself from other Baptist groups and Christian traditions. I mean, you can kind of say the same thing, like the independent fundamental Baptist can say all day long that we're not a denomination, but yet they are an independent fundamental Baptist, and they gather a lot of times with other independent fundamental Baptist churches. While there is no hierarchy, there is no taking away your church building if you decide to go against of what we're saying. They have a collective churches that think alike and hold the same theology and a very distinct identity. And lastly, formal recognition. Many scholars, theologian, ecclesiastical bodies recognize the SBC as a denomination due to its size, influence, and systematic approach to church governance. And that's the other thing that we just hadn't kind of talked about because it's not something that's concrete. But I do want to say that it is very, very partly much out there. When you have a church body such as the Southern Baptist Convention, and I hope this isn't going on, but it's not out of the realm of possibility, that this church body, the Southern Baptist Convention, could essentially be strong arming different policies. While they don't hold direct control over your church, the influence that they have can definitely be very, very real. Like I said, I hope that stuff isn't going on, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Daryl Fortson writes in, American Baptist Church. Thank you very much, Daryl, for clarifying what ABC was. Appreciate that. Stephanie writes back in and says, although it's almost impossible to keep a church from calling itself an SBC church, if they are bound to do so, the convention will disfellowship a church. Huh. Yep, exactly. There you go. Daryl writes in, we are a church that split with the SBC, if that helps. Hey, by the way, Daryl, you did bring up a good point. So if you ever get curious when it comes to denominations, you want a good channel recommendation, I've recommended them here before. They're not linked in anywhere. I'll try to link them in the description after this live stream's over, but go check out Ready to Harvest, the YouTube channel, Ready to Harvest. Great channel, very, very much non-biased, just straight up, hey, this is what these denominations believe. You can go ahead and check out that channel if you ever got curious on any of that, and puts up the basic stuff of where they stand on this issue and this issue and this issue. This is what they believe, et cetera, and so on. Anyways, let's keep going on. So Deborah writes in, hello, Deborah, welcome back. And she puts, I know this might be off topic, but who started non-denominational churches? This is what happens when men put themselves in charge and not God. Way off, man. I mean, so just to kind of let you know, so non-denominational churches, this is my personal opinion here. Basically, all a non-denominational church is a church that has no affiliation with the denomination. For the most part, you're going to find two types of non-denominational churches and maybe a third category, which I like to call Baptist-costal, because depending on which part, and this is just take this from me, traveling across this country for the last 20 years because of my job, I have seen non-denominational churches that were either very, very Baptist, very, very Pentecostal, or very, very Baptist-costal, where they kind of just fuse those together. Definitely probably more in the charismatic realm. So you're going to get a mix, and it all really depends on where you're at in the country. But essentially, it's a denomination It's not a denomination that is a denomination in my mind. That's just me personally. Evidence and reason. It's an SBC membership comes with financial perks, reduced tuition for there, you're 100% right. Evidence and reason. I remember this because when I was looking into my seminary and things of that nature, because I'm a member of this SBC, I do get perks when it comes to going to an SBC college, like seminary, group health, retirement discounts, guidestone, et cetera, and so on. Once again, the structure in the SBC is there for it to be a denomination. I think really, really making the point. Shelly laughs probably about my Baptist-costal. Stephanie Baptist-costal is so real. Too legit to quit writes, every Calvary Chapel grudgingly acknowledged. Hey, I am never personally, side note, little off topic, I'm never going to smash on Calvary Chapels. The limited experience that I have had with Calvary Chapel in person and the ones I've seen online, I really love Calvary Chapels because they're mainly because they're expository. So they go through the Bible verse by verse, which I believe is the correct way to preach the Bible. Yes, every now and again, get on a topical sermon because they are important for different times and areas. But mainly, I am all 100% for exegetical, expository preaching, book by book through the Bible. I believe the Bible supports that. That is, once again, my opinion through inference and scripture. But, Calvary Chapels, book by book, verse by verse. I love Calvary Chapels. They are a little bit more charismatic, but they're also very controlled, which I appreciate. They really hold adherence to scripture. Anyways, side note off Calvary Chapel, my bad. Evidence and reason. Literature is discounted, Stephanie writes, is discounted. VBS program, Sunday school, curriculum. Bam, y'all are bringing up all the stuff. I didn't even have these in my notes, but you're so right. They have VBS programs and Sunday school curriculums and all these different things. I mean, for crying out loud, you can argue that the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible, is like the Southern Baptist Convention translation, which I got a copy back there. That CSB is not a bad translation in my opinion. It's actually really easy to read, and I like the study Bible as well. But you could make all these different arguments on why I truly believe the SBC is a denomination. Evidence and reason puts, thanks, Stephanie Collins. I did not know that. Too legit writes, even Calvary Chapel admits that they're a denomination. Yes, and they very much are. And that is funny when you go, if you ever get bored, not to get too far off topic, go look at the history of Calvary Chapel. It is actually kind of hilarious not hilarious, but great where they came from and the horrible denomination that they're originally part of, and then how the different splits kind of split up. Anyways, you're going to get me on a whole nother subject. Daryl writes, and I also love them because when I'm looking at studies with prophets and wisdom literature, they're the only ones who actually take the care to go in the text. Speaking of Calvary Chapel. Angie writes in, oh, I'm so glad I caught you. Welcome, Angie. You're always welcome here as a mainstay of the channel. Okay, so I'm so glad that so many people are participating in this live stream because y'all are bringing up stuff that honestly I didn't even think about and such good truths to it. Once again, all the more reason why I do believe the SBC is a denomination. So let's go ahead and kind of go over some reasons why the SBC is not a denomination. These are various arguments that I grabbed up throughout the internet in order to be a little bit more neutral in this. So autonomy of local churches. So each SBC church operates independently and has the freedom to govern itself, which is a key characteristic of Baptist polity and can challenge the notion of a united denomination. Once again, that is if you want to redefine what the term denomination is. But like I said, that is an argument that I've seen advocates that the SBC is not a denomination lose. Another one is loose association. The SBC functions more as a fellowship of churches rather than a centralized denomination, emphasizing the voluntary cooperation rather than strict hierarchical authority. Diverse practices, diverse practices is probably the biggest one. If you ever hear someone say that they go to an SBC church, just know that can mean anything. Anything. I mean, you have Calvinistic, more reform style SBC churches. You have more charismatic theology SBC churches. They're all over the place. So I will say at least maybe they got something when it comes to diverse practices. But once again, you kind of all fall back on that Southern Baptist faith and message. Um, and then it continues on some other arguments I was reading, such as the non hierarchical structure and a resistance to a centralized authority. So, bottom line up front, I just can't make a solid argument for the SBC not being a denomination as hard as they would try that they're a denomination, say that they're not a denomination. Let's go back to some comments here. Susie Q writes in, at my mom's old large print CSB, and honestly, it's a good translation, but that large print is a game changer for my TBI damaged eyes. Oh man, I'm so glad never mind. We'll talk about that on another day. Um, Too legit, perhaps they're a French. It's like McDonald's over here, like the McDonald's level denominations. They're a franchise. Stephanie writes in, I'm at least a fifth generation Southern Baptist. It's like you put out the bat signal. Hey, look at I feel like I have a room to say this. Like I said, I've been a part of the SBC. I know the process. I'm not trying to over here bash the SBC. I think they do amazing, wonderful things. Once again, call a spade a spade. You could say all day long you're not a denomination, but clearly you are a denomination. Um Shelly likes Too Legit. That franchise. Angie writes, I love my SBC. It's just what speaks to me. Absolutely. And I hope nobody thinks I'm out here bashing the SBC. I don't know all the inner workings. They've had their legal troubles, things of that nature. I do believe the overall mission of the heart of the SBC is still good and true. It's just sometimes, sadly, you get bad actors going in there, and once again, really sadly, bad things happen, like cover-ups such as that. Financial transparency, hopefully just getting better and better and better. And I feel like they're an organization that is committed to being better at that. Um, Too legit, man. I bet their ice cream machines work just as well as their baptismals. Oh man, is that a thing? Yeah, I do feel like a lot of churches, like their baptismals, especially the older ones. When I was living in Southwest Louisiana, I was a part of this really small independent Baptist church. They weren't really IFB because they weren't King James only, but they were almost as IFB as you could get. But anyways, long story short, they had a baptismal. I felt like that thing just never worked ever. That was a good one though. Rita puts, I appreciate the commentary. Thank you, Rita. Always appreciate you coming on here. Susie, now we just got jokes. No one does potlucks like the SBC. I can't lie with that. Can't lie with that. Too legit puts facts, Susie. Um, Stephanie Collins, right? I was asked to turn on the heater more than once. It's like being an altar. Okay, y'all are just coming with the jokes now. Now we're just getting straight selly up in here, but I love this. Shelley writes, in all fairness, it seems to me that the issue was affiliation with the denomination, period, regardless of which one. And she's going back to the McLean Bible Church argument that in their constitution, that they would not be a part of any denomination. The SBC, once again, does not call itself a denomination, but yet McLean Bible Church was in full cooperation at all three levels with the SBC, being an SBC church, but it's a denomination. Like I said, you can call it not a denomination all you want. It's a denomination. All right. Well, with all that being said, I really, really, really. Oh, hey, Faith of Photos. I just want to highlight this down here in South Louisiana. Hey, lived in South Louisiana for a good 3 years of my life. Catholics will ask me sometimes, what do Baptists believe about this? They do not know that the SBC does not operate like the Catholic Church. Wow, that's amazing. I wonder what their reaction is when they hear that. Oh boy, we're still going on the McDonald's franchise ice bath challenge, getting baptized in SBC baptismal. Um, all right, so we're gonna go ahead and start calling this up. Y'all are great with the comments, by the way. And for those of you who are watching in the future, Please, by all means, keep the conversation rolling. Let me know your thoughts, whether you think, I'm right, I'm wrong. What some of the viewers who are on the live stream, whether they are right, they are wrong. By all means, let this conversation keep going. I think this is edifying. I think this is good, especially when it comes to understanding things. Moving on, evidence and reasons put FWIW, the founding family of NBC, viewed the SBC as a denomination, and they voted against Platt because of that. There we go, right there. Faith and photos. This is a riot tonight. Great convo and topic, brother. Absolutely. I was really glad that we did this. So we're gonna go ahead and end it out here. Once again, if you are new to the channel and you did enjoy this, you thought it was edifying. We cover a variety of different topics. Basically, once again, just talking about that now what after we believe. And I hope this was edifying. I pray that this was God glorifying. And if you did like it, highly encourage you to share it out there, like, subscribe, things of that nature. Help boost this so that way other people can see it. I really appreciate all y'all on here. And, if you didn't like it, go ahead, let me know why. And we could always talk about it as well. But I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And I will talk to y'all on the next one.